Hey all, so this is going to be an update on, highly requested update by quite a few viewers on the palm situation, and just a quick breakdown of some palm trees. I know I made one about February, I think it was, last year, January or so, and we had a pretty rough winter last year. It definitely, a few days it got down to like 31. A few days, and it rained quite a bit. And this year they're saying it's supposed to be an El Nino year, which means that for Florida it's going to be very wet and it's going to still be kind of cold. So we're kind of gearing up for that again. But this is just an update of my palm collection. A lot of it has changed, but anyway, we'll go straight into it. The Phoenix is still doing really good. Thing I've really come to learn about Phoenix, they are armed, obviously. The petiole itself is armed all the way up to where the rake assist starts, and they're not fun. Whenever they're fully grown, it's a little bit easier, but whenever they're still juveniles, and so it's already always on the ground, it's difficult to trim. This one specifically actually has started germinating its own baby Phoenix. So if you can see all of these, like that's a Phoenix, that's a little baby Phoenix, that's one right there. There's another one, and then this is one that's actually grown quite a bit. It's awesome. I love looking at this because it's germinated from itself. It's awesome, and it's got like its own little stem, and it's yay! I'm just excited. I hope it survives this year through the winter. Anyway, I'll probably be taking care of it. Moving on back here, all of my adninias from last year, the ones I made videos of the ambrosia beetle, all of them died. So actually last May, it's about May, I spent about $1,000 replacing all of my actually less subtropical, just more tropical palms. I replaced all of them. So these are all of the new ones. Did a lot of re-landscaping. These sadly aren't as mature as the last ones that I had last year that all died. So this is Adeninia marielli. Dipsis lucens, this is new as compared to what was, and this one's pretty good. It's showing a little bit of trunk down here. Thing about Dipsis is it's a clustering palm, and so it will start growing crazy fast with new stalks all over. Another Adeninia, and one thing I'm actually going to advise for cold protection anyway, is that, especially anytime that you have a crown shafted palm, you should never ever prune them. Don't ever trim them. They will self prune and self trim. They clean up after themselves, and so eventually the old boot or the old crown shaft will fall off on its own. So don't ever just like trim it, even if it's starting to look yellow. Wait for it to get completely dead, and then this will eventually peel and fall on its own. Sometimes I will peel them when whenever it's brown all the way around, which this is. Sometimes they're still green, but this one's all the way pretty much dead. I could go ahead and peel this off, but to allow it to have a little bit more cold protection, I'm leaving it on just because it's another layer to add to it and it doesn't hurt. This is another Adeninia, again not as mature as the one last year, however it will get there eventually. This one also, see how it's still kind of greenish down here, it's not quite yet ready to come off, and so I could peel it if I really wanted to, but I'm gonna leave it on there. These are new. Actually these all died last year too. I was surprised. It got cold last year. It was surprising. But these are my new Widgetia brufricatas, or foxtail. This one, as well as that one over there. There's a local nursery in St. Augustine that is able to get me anything that I want at cost. So for Widgetia at this size, which was a 15-gallon, I paid $95, which is basically like $85 in Homestead. So add an extra $10, but I don't have to do shipping and all that. That's pretty crazy. That's pretty awesome. I'm super excited. It's relatively thick. Widgetia grows decently fast, but not as quick whenever it's still juvenile. So once this really starts to mature and grow more of a trunk, it'll start shooting out new spears much quicker. One thing that I did notice about Widgetia is that when they do produce new spears, like this one right here, see it's just now starting to break, but it takes a long time for it to actually get fully extended and then start breaking. It's been like this for a little while. So this one's a little bit taller than that one, but I noticed that one's a little bit fatter, and that's typical of most palms. Most palms, they grow, when they're shorter, they're a bit more stout and fatter. When they're taller, they're typically thinner. I prefer the short, stout ones because that's normally a little bit healthier. They'll just be more full, but still doing pretty good. This one, this Adninia right here, had a tri stem that it was jetting out, and so the new spear itself was beginning to come out as it would normally up top, but it was coming out dead because it was being pinched on the side here. So I attempted to do surgery on it and see if I could push it out, and then I eventually tried to pull it out from the external boots and then just have it grow on its own. And when I did that, I actually broke off the stalk, and so this this trunk here is actually going to end up dying, and so what was a 3 will eventually turn into just 2 right here. But this petiole is still fine. This one is as well. You can tell how small this one is, so you could notice that all of the new growth was being stunted. Like the next one that was coming through was only about that big. Rather sad. This happens quite a bit with Adninias. They have, I guess, what you would call like a birth defect, where the palm begins to get either an infection, or it'll start growing with an abnormality or whatever. So you got to be careful with Adninias. Another Phoenix Robellini. This one's kind of weird because this head here is doing fine. See, I just pinched myself. Gosh dang, I did. This one's dead. I don't know why, but all the new growth is totally dead. I think I accidentally sprayed it with a weed killer once on accident. Phoenix are pretty reluctant though. They'll grow through almost anything. This is Rivillaris, so the Majesty palm, Riviera Rivillaris. This one, like I said, grows very well in very wet areas. So I'm keeping it in this kind of low lying. If you notice, the grass kind of goes down here. This one's doing quite well. Even my Majesties last year died. I don't know why. I mean, they're normally good to quite cold temperatures, and it really didn't get that cold. Like, I think the coldest we had, I think it hit 30 one night. But it was just like continuously, every day was like 65 and 60, and then nights were like 45 and 46 constantly, and it just started really having that cooler temperature. My other video talks more about it, but anyway, so this is new. All of those are all new. My Hyophorbea lenicalis, which is bottle palm. I love this thing. It's so beefy, and once again, I got this at such a good price. This was a 15-gallon for $90, and so far, you know, it's just super thick, super fat, and it takes forever to grow a new spear. This spear came out probably a month and a half ago, and it's still just now beginning to actually flare out. And so this one, it's still got a ways to grow. I'll have to hit up some higher points before it actually begins to split its stalk. Alright, as for the Phoenix, this one's grown quite a bit. It's about another 6 inches. These are honestly really pretty cold hardy. They'll go down to like 25 or so. You got to be careful when they're more juvenile, because trimming off the rachis with the spikes here, or the petiole itself, is just difficult. I always try to trim further back to where I get all of the spike, so that as it continues to grow, you see all of these, there's no spike left, and I don't have to worry. But Phoenix reclinata, Phoenix dactyla, Phoenix Robellini, all Phoenix, that species itself, they're all armed, and it hurts quite a bit. So as for Cygrus romancophilia, these grow so fast, I'm telling you. This one's doing so well. It's gotten, since the past year, it was about to here. I think my mark is around here somewhere. So, 10 inches, 11 inches or so, and they really start getting pretty beefy. I always try to take off the boots whenever I can. Like this one's still pretty firm on there, but I like to clean up the boots. And this one, my little rescue palm, I went ahead and trimmed up all of the boots. Just pull them off. Once they get old, they'll start cracking. This one's still too healthy, so eventually just pull it and then you cut it, and it just gives it that nice clean trunk look. This one I can't believe's come back, and it's still struggling, but as you can see, the fronds are kind of thinning. Not really frizzle top, but it's just like it used to be way in the woods, and so there was no sunlight, and then when I moved it over here, it finally started getting sun, but it's just going to take some time for it to actually fill out. All of my Hyophorbes and my foxtails, I had 2 Hyophorbes and 2 foxtails, they died last winter, which is fine because I now have the one big Hyophorbe over there, which is doing much better. The other Cygrus ramosophilia is grown even taller. They grow so fast once they actually start hitting maturity, and so this one has begun to really produce lots of seed, and its seed is rather large. This is, as it's started to die, but it is dioecious, meaning at which it produces a male and a female seed. So there's 2 fluorescents. There's a female, which would be, I think this one's the female, and then you can see over here there's a male, and so the male produces the big seed, and then the female typically produces some of these little seed, kind of like these. And so what happens is the 2 seeds actually they fall together into the soil, and they begin to mix, and then new plants get germinated. The Dipsis lucens back here, I used to have an adeninia here, right here, and it died, as with all the others. The Dipsis, though, I was able to save, so it's doing pretty well. I did lose 1 stalk on it, but the rest of it is doing well. I'll make sure I wrap it up this year. The other Phoenix, just like, they're both basically symmetrical, the one on that side and one on this side, and then there's that one in the middle. It's grown quite a bit, but this one, same thing. Trimmed it up a little bit, and golly, it's really starting to get some height, starting to get some beef to it. This one has done most of the growing. So this one has gotten quite a bit bigger. This was I believe a hex system, so there's 6 actual trunks coming off of the cluster at the bottom there. Yeah, this is Cygrus ramosophilia. This is actually Cygrus pyru, so Queen Pyru, that's Cygrus ramosophilia. So these are the same genus, different species, and so you can see the difference. Like that, the big one over there, that's Cygrus ramosophilia. This one is Cygrus pyru, and so the difference is basically the way that these grow faster. Secondly, these are pretty smooth on the trunk. Like I don't have to clean up this trunk or anything. I actually don't prune these at all until the frond itself is like completely dead, and so you can see this one, like the fronds are hanging into the ground. I like the whole natural look. First off, it's healthier for the palm, but secondly, it's much more natural. So a lot of times people will hire trimming companies, or when they trim palms themselves, they'll do like the whole 11 and sometimes 11 and 1 if it's like commercial grade, or maybe 10 and 2, and so imagine like the clock hands, and so they'll take off anything behind 10 and 2 o'clock, and so like all of these. I like to leave it at 9 and 3, so like leave it vertical or horizontal and then let everything hang. If it's not dead, I'm not going to cut it. Again, it's just more healthy for the palm, makes them normally much more beefy, makes them much thicker, healthier through the wintertime, all of that. These grow so quickly though. Like this one last year, goodness, this has probably grown, I would say, 1.5 feet or so even since last year. It's just way up there all the way with the one that's far older. This is much more of a younger palm itself, but they just grow at double the rate as the pyru. So So all of these I did replace. So like all my adninias died last year. This is the only thing that has survived from last year. So this is Rivera rivillaris, the Majesty palm. It's actually its sister because it had two heads, which was right here. I had to cut off, it died. This one's made it through. So it's finally just now starting to come back. I did have one coconut that made it. This coconut lived. I made sure to save at least one of them, and it's grown quite a bit since last year. So I'm gonna produce a new little spear there. But this is a new coconut that I got, once again, $90 for a 15-gallon. I love this one. It's very healthy. Producing a new spear there. I'll be sure to wrap this up because of course coconuts are about as tropical as you get. Like once they hit 40 degrees they start going down. They hate the cold. They are not cold hardy at all. So I'll be sure to keep an eye on that one. The Phoenix doing the same. Actually these are growing quite a bit as well, even though these aren't technically monocots. They're still been growing quite a bit. It's growing a side stalk on the other side there. All right, so moving on. These are also new. So one thing I am going to show you, if you notice these adninias versus some of the ones in the back, how thin these are starting to get, and you can always tell a palm's grow rate by the distance between its boots. So as you can see, that's like 3 inches there, 3 inches there, maybe 4, 3. So it's been growing super healthy and then gets smaller and smaller and tiny and smaller and smaller. And the reason why that is, and you can also see it here, see how it's starting to pencil out, it's getting a lot thinner, is because the nursery and the previous owners did what you should never do, and they trimmed and trimmed and trimmed and trimmed because they wanted that fresh, clean look. And so when you trim a boot and when you cut it off before it's time, like if I were to cut this right now just because it's barely getting some brown on it, or even if this was super healthy and you cut it off, it limits the growth of the palm, and so it makes it smaller and smaller and smaller, and it's not able to actually prune it on its own. And so what happens is the palm starts dying and it starts getting smaller and thinned out, and then what you end up having is you have a regular frond like this, how it's supposed to be, like long and big, and then look, this one's smaller, and then look, this one's even smaller. Look how tiny this thing is. And then the new spear starts to come out and it's like tiny, so you're actually killing the palm away and it's suffocating to death. That is like the quickest way to kill a palm without like just cutting it off, is just slowly prune it down to nothing. So that's why you don't pre-trim palms. They can also get this from cold damage. They'll get smaller and smaller. This one's actually coming back. The new spear, as you can see, is pretty good in length. You can see how it did get tiny, and then it started getting longer again, and started getting longer again, and this one will be longer. I started saving it. So this one I should be able to save. A very bad case of it would be like this. This has been healthy, getting smaller, smaller, smaller. Now look, it's like tiny gap, and the actual crown shaft itself is barely little. And then you look at the actual new spear, and this is all brown. The spear itself is dying. So you can see it's starting to really get mold down in there, and look how tiny these petioles are. Like look at that. That's like what, 8 inches? So I might actually end up losing this whole trunk right here, all because the nursery decided that they wanted it to look presentable, and they killed. I shouldn't have paid full price for this one, but I did. So that's just something to look out for. This is probably my prized possession. So I did have a Oriostonia regina that I bought online that was like a little sapling, and it died last year. It died because I kind of put too much fertilizer on it and I overheated it and killed it. But this was a 30-gallon royal palm that I got for $120, I think I paid. Again, same nursery. It was awesome. Or maybe it was like $140. I think it was $120. Anyway, this is the essence of like Miami. I love this. This and the coconut. So this one I will be for sure wrapping up this year. It's growing quite quite well. It hasn't yet grown trunk. This is all just the crown shaft, but eventually it will. So this is a good comparison of a healthy Adninia. You can see how thick this is and how constant rate the growth is, and then you look at up here in the upper crown how even thick it is up here, and all the spears are growing quite large. See how this one comes all the way out, and actually this new growth here you can see is full. I mean, it's huge, it's pretty tall. So this is a healthy Adninia that has not been pre-trimmed and pre-pruned, and the reason why is because I bought this one when it was still younger, and I have taken care of it since. How green the petals are, I mean, just look how thick each actual blade is off of the rachis here. It's just, these are all around very healthy. So what I am going to do this year, in addition to what I did last year, to make sure I don't lose these palms, is I'm going to build on every zone 10A all the way to 11A, which I'm in 9B. I'm going to build a structure that's going to have 3 posts, 1, 2, 3. It's going to create a triangle perimeter around this palm, and I'm going to use a 6-ounce frost cloth that's going to be commercial grade. I've already got it purchased actually. Frost cloth that's going to completely cover from ground sweeping up all the way over the palm, and will completely enclose this. Now that cloth is going to be put on from end of December till beginning of March probably. So all of January, all of February, these palms will be covered from ground to the ceiling. I am not buying new palms again. These are not dying. It costs quite a bit for this frost cloth, I'm not gonna lie. I got about 300 feet of it, and it's 15 feet wide, so it should be able to carry my taller royal all the way to the short tiny coconut, and it's going to cover all 38 subtropicals. I'm not worried as much about the phoenix. Phoenix, like I said, they're good for lower temperatures. Obviously I'm not worried at all about Sigris. These are pretty native, but everything's going to be covered. I'm not losing palms again this year. So this is basically my update. This last one I'll finish up with. You can tell different seasons that it's been through. So these fronds here were quite yellowing and just a little bit thinner, and even get kind of short on this side. But if you look, they get really short right there, how it's really stout and it's almost cut off like it's been serrated. But as it gets older up to the top, it's gone through a recycling phase, and the whole palm has actually healed itself. This was from Hurricane Matthew, and then that one was from Hurricane Irma, and then it's finally healed itself since then. So the spears just got blown out, which caused these to start growing a little bit hindered and damaged, and finally it's come back. So it's doing well again. Then I also have this stuff I can do a review of at some point, where it protects the outer wall of a palm should it be infected by insects or whatever. So this got cut out, and then I sprayed this sealant that pretty much protects the inside of the trunk. Because one thing about a palm, unlike a normal tree, is that a palm is actually not a tree. A palm is a monocot, and so it's actually a grass. It's a weed, but it's a weed that grows a trunk. But its trunk is the exact same on the inside as it is on the outside. So most palms, or most trees, grow in like circles where you've got like the inner core and so on and so forth, and you can tell its age by as it grows outward. But a palm, it all grows at the same time. So that's basically the palm update. That's the review. This is what it's looking like pre-winter, pre-January in Florida. Right now it's right at Thanksgiving, and so this is where I'm at currently. All of these should make it through the winter this time. I'm not about to lose them again. I'm not spending another $1,000 restarting them and then having to regrow them. They will live, but frost cloth is so key. I'll see if I can make a video on how to actually protect your palms once I'm putting up the frost cloth and all that. Should it actually get really bad this year with it being El Nino, then I'm even going to put a heat source in there. So I'll put heat lamps underneath, like the royal and the coconut for sure. probably the adenias, but other than that, the frost cloth is pretty thick layered. It allows it to breathe and allows sun to penetrate in, but it doesn't allow moisture to get out. So it'll create its own little greenhouse in there, and that will allow me to leave them covered for 2.5 months without taking them off whatsoever. But that's about it. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions, leave them below. Other than that, enjoy the tropics. Thanks for stopping by.